Well, hello to everyone. I'm Kelly Wright, CBN News senior White House correspondent, and today we're talking about the breaking news about the president-elect Donald Trump and his hush money case. As many people know by now, he was sentenced and he appeared in court via video and really talked about it as the judge imposed a sentence upon him. We're going to talk about this in terms of the legal analysis and what it means for the president-elect as he prepares to be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. So joining me now to talk about this is Paul Kamenar. He is the counsel for the National Legal and Policy Center here in Washington, D.C. He is a constitutional attorney. Paul, it's good of you to join us on this important and historic moment, if you will. Let's first talk about the sentencing that Judge Merchan gave. And before we hear from you, let's hear from the president-elect Donald Trump and what he had to tell the court today as he actually visited that courtroom via video.
This has been a very terrible experience. I think it's been a tremendous setback for New York and the New York court system. It's been a political witch hunt. It was done to damage my reputation so that I'd lose the election, and obviously that didn't work. And the people of our country got to see this firsthand because they watched the case in your courtroom. They got to see this firsthand, and then they voted, and I won and got the largest number of votes by far of any Republican candidate in history. And this has been a weaponization of government. They call it lawfare. Never happened to any extent like this, but never happened in our country before.
Paul, your response to President-elect Donald Trump and the message that he made prior to receiving the sentence from Judge Merchan in this hush money trial.
Well, quite frankly, I thought Trump was a little bit mild in terms of his criticism here. I mean, this whole case should never have been brought to begin with. And he had the right to speak to the court. In any criminal case, you have what's called allocution, which means the defendant has a right to say something before he's sentenced. Now, normally a defendant tells a judge, look, I'm sorry, I did a bad thing. Please be easy on me, etc. But Trump was having none of that. He basically, and rightly so, said this whole case was a witch hunt, which it is. And the thing is that he did not have to fear of Merchan imposing a stiffer sentence because Merchan already said he was going to impose what's called an unconditional discharge, meaning it's just a technical notation on the docket that Trump has been sentenced, but there's no jail time, there's no probation, there's no fine, there's nothing there that has an effect on Trump. So I'm glad he did that. His attorney also objected to the way the prosecutor was setting up the background of the case, that this was a serious case and the jury spoke and 34 convictions and Donald Trump has been criticizing this court, hasn't learned his lesson, So his attorney was also measured too. I would have been a little harder hitting with the prosecutor there, because what's going to happen now is this sentence was necessary in order for Trump to appeal the whole conviction. Up until now, he could not do that. Now, he did try to get the sentence paused while he had the Supreme Court look at the immunity aspect of this case, meaning that he was arguing, well, wait a minute, we had some testimony during the trial that should have been immune under this recent Supreme Court decision, such as the testimony of Hope Hicks and Michael Cohen. But the Supreme Court yesterday said, we're denying the stay on that, but don't worry, Mr. Trump, once you're sentenced, it's not going to be a big deal, number one. And number two, you have the right to appeal everything, the immunity plus a half dozen other defects with this case. So I'm kind of glad that this was done, because right now the Democrats are saying, oh, he's a convicted felon going into the White House as the first convicted felon, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, for the time being, because I predict in the next year or so, that conviction is going to be overturned on appeal, and this will just be a footnote in history.
A footnote in history, but for right now, it happens leading up to his inauguration,
Right.
and because of that, it puts a black mark, if you will, on his inauguration in terms of how it will be reported. Because
Yeah.
as you know, the media is already saying a convicted felon, the first
Yeah.
convicted felon to be elected
Yeah.
president of the United States. But the president-elect also pointed out during his address before sentencing in that courtroom via video, he was in Mar-a-Lago when he
Right.
gave this information. He also stated that the case against him was more than just a witch hunt, but it was an act of lawfare. He pointed
Yeah.
out Michael Coangelo, who used to work with the
Right.
Department of Justice, actually left that job and moved in to actually co-counsel, if you will, or advise
Right.
Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, who proceeded with this case even at a time when he thought there was nothing there. It was a nothing burger. But something happened along the way wherein he was influenced to actually bring this case to trial. And here we are.
Right.
And the president-elect was trying to make sure this was removed. He even tried to actually delay it until after his inauguration. My understanding from the sources that I've spoken to within the Trump camp is that he, as well as his attorneys, are seething with this. They're angry, they're
Oh,
upset,
yeah.
and perhaps rightly so, because it does put a mark on his mandate that he received from the American people. And he
Yeah.
stated that today, Paul, when
Yeah.
he stated that he went on to win, and the American people have decided the
Sure.
future of this country. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. No, I understand their position, but at the same time, this was a blessing in disguise, because this means now he has the ticket, so to speak, to appeal and get this overturned. If it was postponed, Rashad had actually said, "Hey, you want this postponed? Okay, see you in 4 years." Then it's overhanging his whole presidency for the next 4 years. That would be intolerable. So in a way, I'm glad that he was sentenced today. Sure, the whole thing was unjust, and the public and the voters spoken in terms of how they regard this serious bookkeeping error, supposedly. But I think in the long run, this is a good result because it now allows Trump attorneys to appeal it. And I have no doubt that this conviction will be overturned. Yes, it was lawfare, both with respect to Colangelo coming over from the Department of Justice, Alvin Bragg, who ran for office, vowing to go after Trump. It was clear that this was a case of lawfare and a witch hunt, et cetera. And I had a laugh when the prosecutor at the sentencing hearing said to the judge that Donald Trump has criticized this case from the beginning, and he has basically besmirched the whole judicial system here. Well, no, I'm sorry. You guys did that. You undermined the rule of law and the way courts are supposed to operate and the way the justice is supposed to operate by engaging in this witch hunt to begin with.
And Paul, as we're looking at video images of what took place this morning there in Manhattan, outside the Manhattan Criminal Court, there were people outside actually demonstrating, protesters gathering around, but they were there in support of the president-elect, and they actually acknowledged that they believe that this was an act of lawfare, weaponizing
Oh, yeah.
the Justice Department to go after the former president, now the president-elect. The fact that American people are actually now stating lawfare, and you see how upset they are with how Democrats have conducted
Yep.
this particular lawfare, as they claim, and as the president has cited. What do you think is happening to the Justice Department, and what will it look like should Pam Bondi go on to become the Attorney General?
Yeah, there's no doubt that Pam Bondi will be the Attorney General. I know her. She's been a great Attorney General of Florida. She and Kash Patel, who's going to be the FBI director, has vowed to basically clean house in a way in terms of getting rid of those FBI and attorneys who basically engaged in this lawfare. I bet right now they're already dusting off their resumes because they know the end is near. But Jack Smith, of course, is packing up his boxes and moving on. And we could talk about that case in terms of the special counsel report he's supposedly going to try to release. But I think once they get in, Pam Bondi, they're not going to engage in what the Democrats say, oh, well, you're just going to be tit for tat now. You're going to pick out your enemies. I think what they're going to do is just hold people accountable for what they did rather than giving them a free pass, as well as they should. And of course, Congress, Jim Jordan's committee, and Comer, they're going to have investigations. They're going to bring Jack Smith up there. They're going to ask about this way they went after Trump with Jack Smith, and also with respect to the New York case about how the Colangelo get transferred over from the Justice Department. So there'll be an investigation and hold these people accountable. And that's not lawfare. That's just basically accountability.
And let's talk about the Jack Smith case real quickly, because he is going to make it a public record. Just talk to me about that and how that will impact the president-elect, the 47th president of the United States. Will it have any bearing on how he goes on to govern, to become the commander-in-chief and the most powerful man in the free world and around the world?
Yeah, no, Jack Smith has got basically two reports sitting on his desk. It's actually two volumes of his report. Volume one is his report with respect to the January 6th case here in D.C., and volume two is with respect to the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case. Now, the attorneys in Florida filed a motion, and Judge Aileen Cannon put a hold on the release of both reports for the next 3 days until Sunday. Just last night, the Justice Department filed an emergency appeal to the 11th Circuit saying, no, we want that overturned. Now, it's kind of weird because Jack Smith basically said to the court, look, I'm not going to release the report I have on the Mar-a-Lago case because we still have two defendants technically still in the case, Walt Natal and Oliveira, who were aides to Trump, who are also still in the case. They said, we're not going to release that, and they shouldn't, because that would be prejudicial to them if that case continues. But he said, look, Aileen Cannon in Florida doesn't have any jurisdiction over the D.C. case. So I've already given that to Merrick Garland. And Merrick Garland is the one that decides whether to release it publicly. I think right now, the one in January 6th has already been given to certain members of the Congress, which the regulations allow that to be done. But none of this has been public yet. I think we'll know better by Sunday or maybe Monday what's going to happen with these reports. But my point is that Jack Smith should not release even the Florida case because the judge there ruled he was unconstitutionally appointed. And that decision has not been reversed yet by the 11th Circuit. So if he's unconstitutionally appointed and that whole indictment in Florida was erased from the books, then he's no longer authorized to issue any report, at least on the Mar-a-Lago case. So it's kind of a split the baby kind of thing of what's going on. But at the end of the day, this report's going to come out. What damage will it do to Trump? I don't see any damage. It's basically going to rehash the same old stuff we already know. It's going to be one-sided, totally unfair, because I'm sure Trump will try to, his attorneys, rebut some of the allegations there. But the American people saw both these cases, and they rejected it. So they're going to not hold any grudge or any complaint against Trump for the reports. Of course, the Democrats will make some hay out of it. They'll pick out certain things like, oh, look, here's some other evidence that we didn't know about. Let's make a big deal about that. But, they're just basically, trying to relitigate the past, and it's time to move on.
Paul, you are a constitutional attorney. Give me a summation on this dark period in America where we saw a president indicted,
Yeah.
charge, then actually go through a trial, jury of his peers in his hometown and home state of New York, finding him guilty, and then all of that actually happening at a time that he was running for president of the United States. He wins the election, not just wins it, but wins it overwhelmingly, with a majority in the popular vote as well as the electoral college. And now
Yeah.
this sentencing and moving forward, this is a man who has a mission. He's made it very clear what he wants to do for America. As he stated, he wants to make America great again, make America more economical, make America safe again,
Right.
make America better. And the American people, many of them who voted in favor of him overwhelmingly, are even standing in the streets saying, enough is enough. We have to move forward as a country. Give me a
Yeah.
summation of how the legal system is healed in the new administration.
Sure. Well, first of all, this legal warfare against Trump actually backfired because there were a lot of people that actually voted for Trump precisely because he was being targeted. And keep in mind that none of these cases, whether it's Jack Smith, Alvin Bragg, Fannie Willis in Georgia, none of them would have filed their prosecutions if Trump didn't announce that he's running for president. Only after he announced that, they said, oops, we got to now use lawfare to go after him. But like I said, going forward, I think the American people are tired of this. I think the new administration will be a just and fair one. To be sure, there'll be some accountability to be had. I don't think they're going to be going after prosecuting Lynn Cheney and things like that, like the Democrats are. But you never know that Biden may say, "Hey, look, I'm going to give you guys all a pardon in any event." But yes, this has been a terrible chapter in our history. But it did at least get a constitutional ruling out of this, namely the one on the immunity from the Supreme Court. The Democrats bought it on and say, okay, thank you very much. Look at this ruling that now the president is immune from prosecution for presidential acts. And that had not been done before. So as a constitutional matter, going forward, Trump now in the next 4 years cannot be targeted by a subsequent administration for things he will do during his term in office, because they'll involve presidential actions, whether it's the immigration policies he's going to enact, or the energy policies, or what have you. They've now, and in fact, Biden actually benefits from this immunity ruling, because now they can't go after him for things that he did while he was president. Although, by the way, the things he did as vice president with his son Hunter and all that kind of money laundering and all that's still probably an open book. But I don't think that's going to be resurrected.
Paul, I want to thank you for wrapping things up and actually
Sure.
providing your expert analysis on this. Thank you for the role that you play as Chief Counsel to the National Legal and Policy Center here in Washington, D.C. Final question is, based on all of this that's transpired, what is your hope for America?
Well, I hope for America that we're going to get away from this lawfare, as you mentioned, and that we're going to have a fair and equitable system for our government. And again, from an economic and democracy point of view, to make America great again. I mean, Trump has talked about looking at the Panama Canal, which is a serious issue. I litigated that case, by the way, on the grounds that the Canal Treaty was unconstitutional because Congress never authorized the transfer of all this property to Panama, which is required by the Constitution. Greenland, he's looking at that. These are bold steps that Trump is looking at, and I look forward to basically a golden renaissance, the golden age of America coming up in the next 4 years.
Yeah, there will definitely be a robust discussion about the Panama Canal as well as Greenland, and we'll have to have you back to talk about that at all as
Be
well.
glad to.
Paul Kamenar, thank you for representing America as the counsel for the National Legal and Policy Center. Thank you for joining us on CBN News.